Today we'll talk about 4 things you should consider doing in your 20s to make sure you get off to a good start on your road to financial independence. From time to time, we all wonder how our lives might look had we made different choices at pivotal moments. And since this is a personal finance blog, I'll spare you all the commentary on deeper questions about relationships. But given the numerous financial decisions we make cumulatively each day, week, month, and year, the way we handle our money provides plenty of opportunity to second guess. So in that spirit, this is the first of 2 videos I'll be shooting talking about your 20s and 30s and some of the more pivotal financial decisions that we tend to make in those decades. Now, as I do this, I'll kind of present it from the perspective of what I would do if I could go back to my 20s and do it all over again. Some things I would have done the same, some things I would change. But here they are in no particular order, 4 things I would have done in my 20s or did do. I hope they're helpful to you. All right, item number 1 is dodge debt. The 20s are a difficult time in life to avoid debt. There are probably more temptations to assume debt in one's 20s than any other point in life. And I'm not saying more debt in terms of the amount of debt, just stuff that you could borrow money for. For example, in your 20s, you're more likely to need help funding your education, housing, automobiles, not to mention purely consumer-based spending. Now, all this is happening at a point in your life when you probably know less about consumer debt than you will for the remainder of your life, while credit companies, banks, car manufacturers all simultaneously provide incredibly persuasive arguments suggesting that debt is the quick and easy solution to all of your financial problems. These lenders flock to college campuses and other places that young people gather so they can sell their products. It's almost like a Girl Scout selling cookies outside of a weight loss clinic. Pretty cruel. Now, I'm not necessarily claiming that all debt is bad. To an extent, debt and appreciating assets like an education or a home is actually quite useful. But that's also what makes it so challenging, particularly when you're in your impressionable 20s, to understand just where the line is that distinguishes between good and bad debt. But let's give that a go. First off, I would tell myself or any other 20-something-year-old to avoid debt on depreciating assets like cars and consumer goods altogether. Now, depreciating assets lose value over time. That's true of most of the things we buy, like cars, bikes, groceries, furniture, clothes, utilities, and much more. They all amount to little or nothing of value when we're done using them. In other words, these items contribute very little to our overall net worth, meaning they do next to nothing to make us wealthier. In fact, they have the opposite effect. And that's why borrowing money for these items only adds insult to injury by further enhancing the negative effect they place on our net worth through additional interest. Now, some of you may follow me on debt related to many consumer items, but taking a debt-free position on the purchase of a car is certainly not a mainstream point of view. I get it, it's unusual, but so is being wealthy. Instead of explaining to you why I don't borrow money for cars, we've actually made a video about that. I'll link it above and in the description below. In that video, we cover the true cost of borrowing money for a car, including the opportunity cost from not saving and investing the money that you're applying to servicing the debt. I also want to point out that I'm not totally against using credit cards, assuming you pay off the balance each month. Used this way, credit cards are actually a helpful way to earn cash back for purchases or other perks like airline miles, gift cards, hotel stays, restaurants, things like that. And having a credit card is a great way to build credit. But note that I said you have to pay off the amount that you owe every month. Don't let it roll over from one month to the next. Interest rates for credit card balances are among the highest of all types of consumer debt. I actually recently saw a credit card that charged over 36% for unpaid balances. If you get behind on a credit card payment like that, it's going to be very, very difficult to catch up. All right, the second thing I would tell myself in my 20s is to invest as soon as possible. There are 2 key ingredients for building wealth through investing: money and time. And the amount of money one invests is dependent on a variety of factors, which I won't address here. But time, on the other hand, is constant for all of us. It comes and goes at the same rate. We can't buy more of it. We just have to use it as efficiently as we possibly can. And what's the most efficient way to use time as an investor? To keep your money invested as long as possible. And there's no substitute or shortcut for time in the market. Sure, you could potentially place a big bet on a single investment that has a bull run or sees a sudden surge in its value, but you're almost as likely to lose money with that investment strategy. In fact, a while back I ran a comparison of short-term stock ownership to taking your chances at a casino and showed how short-term investing really isn't much different than gambling. Now, long-term investing, on the other hand, has consistently produced meaningful benefits for investors for over a century. While I would never guarantee that investing in anything over any period of time will generate a superior rate of return, I can say that historically, broadly diversified portfolios of stocks have produced the best returns relative to their level of risk. In other words, if you have a lot of time to invest, a diversified basket of stocks is a great way to go. And how much difference does time make? Well, here's a table illustrating the value of $1 invested in an S&P 500 index fund over a period of 1 to 50 years. So from this table, we see that a dollar invested in an S&P 500 index fund would be worth 7.6 times its value in 20 years, almost 21 times its value in 30 years, and nearly 160 times its value in 50 years. The key thing to note is that for double the time, you get more than double the return on your investment. That's compounding interest working for you. Now, personally, I didn't have much opportunity to invest prior to my 20s. Like I said earlier, there are two ingredients for building wealth through investing. I had time, but not money. Now, generally speaking, our 20s are when we start our careers and begin establishing habits financially that will stay with us for decades to come. That's why it's so critical to make investing a priority and start as early as we can. Now, you can start later and still retire one day, but the longer you wait, the tougher it will be to substitute for lost time. Hi there, if the information in this video is helpful to you, please show your appreciation by clicking like and subscribe below. That will help our channel to grow. It'll allow me to keep making content so I can help people learn about personal finance. Number 3, I wouldn't buy that house. Now, for those of you who don't know, I live in Alabama, which is a very low cost of living area. And my wife and I were married. We never considered not buying a house. It was much easier back then to buy one than it is today. And for some reason, I convinced myself that we should buy a house that we could stay in for a very long time. And it's a bit fuzzy, but I think my reasoning was that even though the initial purchase costs of a home are high, the longer you own the home, the more time you give the market appreciation to offset those costs and justify the investment. And that all sounds great, but here's the thing. Those facts don't strongly correlate with the size of the home you buy. My wife and I planned to have kids eventually, but we both knew we were going to wait several years before enlarging our family. As it turned out, we lived in, maintained, heated, cooled, insured, and paid taxes on a 2,600 square foot house for 7 years before our son joined us in 2012. In hindsight, it would have been much more efficient to just buy a smaller house and upgrade when we started having kids. To add insult to injury, we moved a few years after my son was born to get into a different school system, and this all would have probably been easier had we just bought something a little more appropriate in the first place. As you buy a home, try to think 5 to 7 years ahead. Any less than that, and you'll forfeit quite a bit of cash in the buying and closing process, just those front-loaded costs of owning a home. Any longer than that, you run the risk of finding that your needs have changed significantly over that period of time. The fourth thing I wish I would have done in my 20s was use time wisely. When I was in high school, I thought I was busy until I got to college. And then when I was in college, I thought I was busy until I graduated and got a job. When I was getting going in my job and career, I thought I was busy until I started grad school at the same time I was working. And then when I was in grad school, I thought I was busy until I had a kid and became a parent. Since then, it's only gotten busier and busier as the demands of family and life ratchet up the intensity year after year. Many of my peers in their 30s and 40s seem to share a similar story. I think it will be this way probably until our kids grow up and at least start driving themselves or move out of the home entirely. It's not that I really expect you to care how busy my life is, but it does serve as a convenient example of how busy we always seem to feel until the next stage of life arrives. I've already explained that I was married for 7 years before my first child was born, and my career actually began a full year prior to that. So I had 8 years between college and the life-altering arrival of parenthood. Now, I did use 2 of them well going to school, but I wish I had used the other 6 more wisely. And this YouTube channel and my website are a perfect example. If I could go back in time, I would have started on those much sooner instead of waiting until I was 40 and have less time to benefit from them. So I'd encourage you to think about things that you're good at, interests you have, maybe your profession, or there are certifications, things you can do to kind of advance your career, put you in a better position to earn money or move into different new and exciting things. Your 20s are a great time to be thinking about that sort of stuff. The main point I'm trying to make is to be sure that you use the time that you have in a way that brings you the highest possible degree of joy or utility. Don't waste it watching Netflix or playing Xbox, though I guess they have their place as well. The 20s are probably the most impactful years of your life from a financial point of view. The good news is you'll have plenty of time to correct mistakes made during this decade, and the things you do well will reverberate with positive side effects for decades to come. On the other hand, you'll never have this much potential for your time again. Be sure you use it as wisely as possible. As always, we're grateful for your time and your interest in our videos. God bless and take care.